Good morning. I'm Matthew Johnson, the senior minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Rockford, Illinois. And welcome to you. Whether you are joining us live at 10 Central on May 31st, 2020 or later, welcome. Whether you're a member or friend of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Rockford or a member or friend of another Unitarian Universalist congregation who's found your way here because you need worship today, or if you are exploring religion anew and have found us, welcome. Whether you are frightened or grieving or determined or curious or sad or furious, enraged, worried, however you are feeling this morning, today, welcome. Whoever you are and whatever brings you here, welcome. We're coming to you from the sanctuary at the church. This sanctuary, for those of you who haven't worshiped in this building with us, the light moves through the year. And what we set up, this little setup closer to the camera for you in March, the light shone through the window right here. Now it's a few feet behind us. So we've changed the settings on the camera to get a better light balance, but it makes us all a little washed out in yellow this morning. But we'll figure that out. New light. With me today here in the sanctuary is Tim Anderson, my colleague in worship and the music director at the church. Lindsay Dunn, our director of religious education, who you'll see in a moment. Autumn Powell, our office manager, is back of the hall running the technology. Our worship associate, Judy Johnson, has pre-recorded their testimony, which you'll hear later in the service. Chris Ainsworth, our membership coordinator, is at home, but will be chiming in on the Facebook feed. And I'm super grateful this morning that our guest preacher is the Reverend Morgan McLean. Morgan did her internship here at this church 9 years ago. It seems impossible that it was that long ago. It seems like just yesterday we were here collaborating on creative worship and how we could use puppets to tell stories, doing pastoral care and justice and learning about ministry. She has thrived in her career and is now serving as the Minister for Congregational Life at our congregation in Davis, California, and recorded a sermon for us this morning. So you will see and hear from Morgan later in the morning, in the service. If you're watching on Facebook, there's a comment area, and we invite you to comment, say hello, so that we can know who is with us, be present with us, be thoughtful about what you post in his public feed. If you'd prefer not to be distracted by comments, there's a quiet mode, and you can look up instructions on how to do that on your device. We have now a ritual of how we do this kind of worship. It is a source of comfort and connection. I know for many of you, you have told me it is for me too. Touchstone, a way to know that we have some rhythm and some home in our lives. So I will ring the bell, and we will worship together. We're going to begin with singing this morning. Tim will play and sing, and wherever you are, we invite you to sing along. We'll be singing the hymn by the Unitarian Universalist minister John Corrado, Voice Still and Small, an invitation to listen and pay attention.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
As we've been exploring the theme of Sabbath this month of May, we've been singing the song Loosen, Loosen by the songwriter Ali Halpert. It reminds us that we do not have to carry the weight of the world in our muscles and bones. And this morning, when I know that many of you feel like you are carrying the weight of the world, so many feel like they're carrying the weight of the world, to remember that we don't have to do it all by ourselves, and that we are loved as we are as well. We'll sing together.
Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
So glad that you are here for worship. If today is your first time worshiping with us, we're especially happy to have you joining us online. Please do take a moment to like our Facebook page as a way to stay in touch, and you can also go to uurockford.org, click on newsletter sign up, share your information, and there will be a visitor form posted in the comments here on the stream, and you can let us know about who you are. We will be doing this for a while, and so thinking about how we integrate all the new folks who are finding us online into our community is important to us. So please let us know who you are so we can do that. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our faith, a beacon of truth, a fire for justice, a warmth for the soul. Lindsay will light our chalice here at the church. If you have a chalice at home, you may light that too. That would be wonderful for us to be together that way. And we'll speak together the covenant of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and reason is its guide. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to serve human need. This is our covenant. And now we'll sing together our chalice response song.
Shine forth through us today. May light of reason guide our way. May beauty, truth, and joy become a flame that burns in everyone.
We gather for worship. It's a stunningly beautiful day outside here in northern Illinois. The sky is blue, the trees and the grass are green. It's just about perfect. And the world isn't. Sorrow and tragedy and rage and oppression and violence, the story of the day. I invite you to hold that paradox, that fullness, without rushing to answers or explanations, but to hold the fullness. As we gather in worship this week, I ask you to hold in your thoughts and your prayers the family of Jim Overly, who died earlier this week after an illness. He was peaceful at Wesley Willows, and his beloved wife, Rhea, was able to be by his side. Service arrangements are pending, both in Mendota, where they spent many of their years, and something here in Rockford, which we'll let you know about. But I ask you to hold Rhea in particular in your thoughts and your prayers. A memorial service will be held this afternoon for Scotty Lichtenheld, who spent most of her life as a member of this congregation. Scotty died earlier this year. We had planned a memorial in early April, but had to postpone We'll be doing that memorial service on Zoom this afternoon at 2 o'clock. The meeting ID for that gathering is on the front page of our website at uurockford.org, and we would be honored to have you join us. It's 2 o'clock today. I've been thinking about what to say to all of you about the murder of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police earlier this week and the resultant events of the week around the country and here where most of us live in Rockford, Illinois. The video is shocking. And somebody said to me, "Do you think this will change anything?" And I thought, oh, there have been so many. We could list a long list of names, and it feels like, why would this be any different? Maybe a few marches and protests and then, but something different. A refusal to let this just be another name. That police violence, police murder is murder and not acceptable to us. And yet what's happened in the last few days has been horrifying for those who are committed to the work of justice. As the protests and marches around the country have been overtaken mostly by white supremacists who have infiltrated the rallies and destroyed property which the protesters never called for, and indeed have often tried to stop. Dr. King said famously, and a lot of people are repeating these words, that riots are the language of the unheard. That when you cannot be heard, there is no other option. And our task then is to hear so that people are not unheard and to respond to what we hear. How do you do that? Well, one thing you have to do is stop talking. We spend so much time talking and so much noise, so much din, so little silence, that we never hear the grief, the rage, the trauma, the heartbreak, the demand for justice, the clear policy demands that have been made about reform and accountability and an end to militarization of police departments. Very clear asks. But we don't hear those because we are too noisy, many of us. Some of the protests and rallies have been taken over, especially as the rallies have drawn to a close, by white anarchists, some by white supremacists. White anarchists and white supremacists have a common agenda, which is narcissism, which is destruction for the sake of destruction, which is violence for the sake of violence. It is not what the leaders want or ask for. Indeed, it's incredibly counterproductive for the cause of making justice. Yesterday in Rockford, there was a rally. Many of you were there. It was peaceful. People spoke about the need for justice and the clear demand for accountability and an end to militarization and over-policing of particular neighborhoods. The rally came to a close. Some people stayed. The graffiti began. The anarchists took over. Most people had gone home because it was over. Overnight, there was some violence and some looting. The Rockford Police Department seemed, from what I saw in the news this morning, to show more restraint than a lot of other departments around the country. And I know this morning leaders of the protests, as well as the police chief and others, were in the neighborhood around the District 1 headquarters cleaning up. The folks cleaning up this morning are the ones I want us to pay attention to. Folks like Letisa Wallace, who's spoken here at the church, and Maurice West, Jr., who's spoken here. These are leaders to pay attention to. What they ask for, what they demand, their analysis. If you're wondering, in all the din and all the shouting on social media and in the news, who to listen to? Listen to Maurice West and Letisa Wallace. Here locally in Rockford, listen to Reverend Barber nationally. Dr. King said riots are the language of the unheard. He also said that when you want change, you do research, you make your demands, you sit down and negotiate. If you don't get what you want, and we have not gotten what we want, then you pray. then you do direct action. But we skip step 3. We don't pray, we don't reflect, we don't get clear about our motivations, we don't deal with the rage, the powerlessness, and then that gets acted out. So this morning, this Sunday morning, on this beautiful day here in this part of the world, we're going to invite you to think about silence and quiet and listening, because if we are hearing the language of the unheard, then we need to hear. We need to listen. And if it is for us to speak, then it is time to speak. And if it is for us to listen, then it is time for us to listen. So I invite you this morning into spiritual reflection, into listening with your heart, so that our actions might be grounded in the spirit of love this day and every day. Let us worship together.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Good morning. I am Lindsay, and I'm the Director of Religious Education here at the church, and I'm happy to be here with you one more time virtually. Our story this morning is Silence by a collection of artists referred to as Lemniscates, based in Barcelona. In the silence, I can hear the waves crashing and the wind playing with my kite. At night, I can hear what the stars tell me. And in the morning, what the birds say. When I listen, I can hear my feet when dancing, my heart when running, my legs when swimming, and my breath when still. In spring, I can hear bees loving flowers. In summer, trees chattering. In fall, leaves tumbling. In winter, snow twinkling. Be still. Listen. How many things can you hear?
Where we're at and what's happening, we continue to worship online, and we will for the foreseeable future. I worked with a group of clergy over the last couple weeks to design some criteria for what congregations could do in this new phase, and worshiping online continues to be the safest way for us to be most inclusive and to reach as many of you as possible. We'll be rolling out opportunities for some outside kinds of things for some of our folks, and more small groups and other things, but we will be online for a while. So I hope that folks are figuring out how to join us and participate in that. We do have upcoming events online at the church. That includes a Wonderful Wednesday. We tried for the spring and summer of the year-round garden session last week, but we had a little technical problems. We're all figuring things out, but you've all been very graceful about that. So Carol Hunter will do spring and summer this coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and the fall and winter session for year-round gardening will be later in the month. And we've got a schedule for the month of different programs and ways to participate in the Wonderful Wednesday and ways to engage the conversation that is happening in our country and in our faith. So be on the lookout for that, 7 o'clock every Wednesday. The annual meeting of the congregation will be next week after worship on Zoom, so we do hope that you will participate in that, and it'll be the same meeting ID as we use for Coffee Hour and Wonderful Wednesday. It'll be posted in the newsletter. The agenda was included in the Friday update that went out on Friday, so you can look at the draft budget, the top line numbers on the agenda, the recommendations from the nominating panel. All of that needs to be approved by the congregation a week from today, so please take a look. If you have questions about those things, we often have a special forum or pre-meeting to dive into the details. We are unable to do that this year, but we invite you to email me, minister@uurockford.org, and I will pass those emails along to the appropriate person on the board or finance committee or nominating panel if you have questions about what's on the agenda so you can understand what is happening next week. But please join us, and we've got a way for you to vote so that we can know that we have approval to move ahead with our ministry and programs at the church. Coffee hour will begin today after worship service, so we invite you about 5-6 minutes after we start logging on to coffee hour, and we'd love to have you join us for that, and the meeting ID will be up on the screen in a moment. Please check in with each other. Talk with each other, call somebody up. If you're thinking of someone, send them a note. We need everybody to make that community happen. Though we're not seeing each other in person, it doesn't mean we can't reach out to one another. Please reach out to me if you need anything. If you're a member or friend of the church, you've gotten laid off or lost tip or gig income or need support in any way, please let me know. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I'm a little bit behind on a couple of requests, and I might take a little while for me to get to you, but I will, by the beginning of next week, be sure to get back to everybody. Each week we take up an offering to support the work of justice and mercy in the world, and 80% of what we collect each week we give away to a different organization each week. And this week we're sharing our offering with the Unitarian Universalist Military Ministry, which works at places like Great Lakes Naval Station to provide Unitarian Universalist ministry to the cadets and folks in the service there. It can often be a place of discernment and people seeking community, and they're doing wonderful work. Our Jim Parrish, who is a member of this church and now serving our congregation in Fayetteville, Arkansas, did part of his ministry at that place, so some of you may remember that. Thank you for your generosity to this program. You can give online by texting the number on the screen or by going to uurockford.org/donate, and Chris will post a link to the donation portal in the stream as well. If you are in the habit of making your gift online to the church or making your gift in person to the church, be sure to make sure that you're making your annual operating pledge as well. We have just 1 month left of the fiscal year, and we need folks to make sure they complete their pledge so that our staff can be paid and our ministry can be healthy here at the church. The offering will now be given and received.
Good morning. I'm Judy Johnson, Worship Associate today. These are trying times. Candidly, I'm overwhelmed. I'm struggling with many challenges that we face as a people, as a nation, as a world. Some challenges are immediate, some challenges are long-standing. I don't feel the need to reiterate the events of the last couple of days or months or years, nor the subsequent results we are experiencing currently. On Friday, watching one news source, I was reminded of a presidential commission that was established in 1967. The National Commission on Civil Disorder was also known as the Kerner Commission. The commission was tasked with identifying the cause of riots in two cities, Detroit, where 43 people were killed, and Newark, where 26 were killed. 23 cities across the nation also suffered deaths as a result of what was labeled civil disorder. In their 1968 report, the Kerner Commission concluded, and I quote, that bad policing practices, a flawed justice system, and several additional factors converged to propel violent upheaval on the streets of African American neighborhoods. That was 1968. That was 52 years ago. How far have we come? This recollection has stirred deep feelings. In the fall of 1967, I was a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. One day in October, walking to class, my friend and I approached the classroom building and found the doors closed off with yellow crime scene tape. We were puzzled. We decided to return to the clinic office for further directions. Unwittingly, we became distant, peripheral observers of what became known as the Dow chemical riots. My friend and I got a whiff of tear gas and saw two students emerging from University Hospital, one with his head wrapped with a blood-stained bandage, the other student on crutches. Even as a distant observer, I found the experience disturbing. The event made national news, but I only recently learned that 70 people were hospitalized. 9 were university police. As I prepared this testimony, my head cleared, and I'm going to take some time to process my thoughts and my feelings. I'll do some reading. I'll talk with family and friends, and I'll reflect in silence, one day at a time. Thanks for listening.
From all the fret and fever of the day, let there be moments when we turn away, and deaf to all confusing outer din, intently listen for the voice within. In quietness and solitude we find the sound ceaseless wisdom of the deeper mind, with clear, harmonious purpose, let us then bring richer meaning to the world again.
The reading is The Sound of the Sun by George Bradley. It makes one all right, though you hadn't thought of it. The sound like the sound of the sky on fire, like Armageddon whistling and crackling, the explosions of sunlight booming as the huge mass of gas rages into the emptiness around it. It isn't a sound you are often aware of, though the light speeds to us in seconds, each dawn leaping easily across a chasm of space that swallows the sound of that sphere. But if you listen closely some morning, when the sun swells over the horizon and the world is still and still asleep, you might hear it. A faint noise so far inside your mind that it must come from somewhere, from light rushing to darkness, energy burning towards entropy, towards a peaceful solution, burning brilliantly, spontaneously in the middle of nowhere, and you too must make a sound like that, though that, of course, you have no way of hearing at all. We do have ways of listening to ourselves in different ways, and I invite you now into a time of centering, a time of reflection and prayer. You might close your eyes and feel your feet firmly on the ground. Notice your breath. This is a time made sacred by our caring. We pause in this moment, surrounded by the spirit of life and love. We enter into this time that we might listen to the fears and to the good news inside ourselves, and that we might lift up all that is our lives to be held in the love and support of this community. This morning we hope for health and healing of ourselves, knowing we are each vulnerable to the hurts of the world in different ways. May forgiveness be granted and received. May we find strength for tomorrow. May we find confidence to live into being our best selves. And may we ever be grateful for our successes and for things in our lives that bring fulfillment. We do not exist alone. Let us send our hopes to those closest to us, to our friends and family, to the people we love, the people we know who are struggling, those who are dying, those who need our support. And let us give thanks too for their joys and the celebrations ahead. May we always find ways to show that we care. As we join our hopes in this community, let us also extend our prayers to the communities that support us, to all known and unknown people affected in this pandemic, to those taking to the streets seeking justice, to all the places and all the people around the world seeking peace. And now let us each in our own ways name the joys and sorrows in our lives in a time of silence together. Amen.
cathedrals made of trees, and to the twilight vespers as the sun falls to its knees. I listen to the echoes of the ageless canyon walls, and to the stained glass worship of the rainbow as it calls. Be still and know, be still and know, be still and know that I am God. I listen to the whisper of the river as it flows, and to the swirling ballet of 1,000 flakes of snow. And when I hear the eagle's wings repeat a soaring prayer, and when the falling stars cry out, I know that God is there. Be still and know, be still and know, be still and know that I am God. Each of these a silent choir, a wordless hymn of praise. The language is unspoken, yet heard in many ways. A soundless sanctuary where I am free to go to meet God in the silence, to just be still and know. Be still and know, be still and know, be still and know that I am God.
When the world is still and still asleep, you might hear it. A faint noise so far inside your mind that it must come from somewhere. But it's interrupted by an email notification. Maybe we linger on that noise, or maybe the email leads us to the daily news, which leads us to our friends' reactions, which leads us to reactions from people who are definitely not our friends, and so on. The world is not still for long. If screen time wasn't already a way of life, it certainly has become one in the past few months. Technology is in many ways improving the human condition. We have more information, better medical treatment, faster communication. And in many ways, technology is challenging the human condition. This has been a prophecy of many science fiction writers. Ray Bradbury is perhaps one of the more famous ones. He also, at times in his life, was a Unitarian Universalist. He wrote Fahrenheit 451 in 1953, the title coming from the temperature at which paper burns. In Bradbury's future, firemen start fires to burn books. Books present too many divisive ideas. Instead, TV and constant sound from tiny shells in people's ears fill the minds of people in this dystopian future. One of those firemen is Guy Montag, the main character. But he begins to secretly save the books and think for himself. Inside homes in this future, TVs are the size of walls, ideally on all four walls of a room, and they are always on. It is such a fast-paced, busy world that people need the shells in their ears to help them cope. This constant input, constant noise is like a dulling drug that slowly takes people away from their physical senses and their creativity. In this dystopia, constant stimulation makes it seem that people are feeling something, but actually the external input replaces their own feelings and thoughts. Guy Montag's wife is plugged in to an ocean of sounds, music, and talk whose ebb and flow takes her through sleep as well as waking hours. She and other people walk around with these tiny shells in their ears, transmitting music and talk and noise all day. I wonder, have we arrived at this chilling future? Has technology made the world move so fast around us that oddly enough we need more technology just to cope? The mega technology company Apple reports that since production began, over 400 million iPods have been sold, 2.2 billion iPhones, and more than 360 million iPads. That's a lot of technology from just one company. There's no question that we are plugged in. In an interview with Ray Bradbury in the Los Angeles Times in 2007, he said that TVs stuff you with so much useless information you feel full. But you're not full. You don't get the full story or context, just factoids. He saw television as an opiate, a piece of technology that would dominate our lives. When the book was published, TV screens were only about 7 inches big and in very few homes. Bradbury lived to see that he was right about the shells with constant noise and the TVs getting as big as walls, whole rooms now devoted to watching TV, and certainly more than one screen in a house. In my household, I confess, I live with my husband Daniel and my 1-year-old Martial, and we have just one TV and 3 computers, a Kindle, an iPad, XM radio, 2 smartphones, a PS3 gaming system which we use to stream content, and it also is a DVD Blu-ray player, and 1 Nintendo Wii, and 3 Google Home devices in different rooms. We subscribe to the fastest available internet and 3 services online, Amazon Prime, Hulu Plus, and Netflix, all which stream TV shows and movies into our devices. Those are just the things we use on a regular basis. We have boxes full of wires and old phones, a few old laptops, plus random chargers and software and accessories. And really, neither of us would consider ourselves all into technology, and with a baby, we don't have much extra TV watching time. Despite all this that we have, almost every night we're faced with, what do you want to do? And honestly, we don't know, because technology has overwhelmed us with choices. We don't want to be plugged in all the time, but it seems like that's what we're supposed to do. And we're usually plugged in to more than one thing at a time. When we do watch a movie or a TV show, I surf Facebook on my phone or play solitaire. And next to me, Daniel's on the Kindle reading the news or catching up on email. This is not quality time. Sometimes we catch ourselves and we play a game or go outside. But more often than I'd like to admit, we just stay plugged in, overstimulated, dulled by technology, and completely reliant on it for entertainment, information, distraction, and communication. In this COVID-19 world, this issue has gotten complicated. Our iPad is the only FaceTime our baby is going to get with her grandparents for the foreseeable future. Zoom is connecting us to work and our friends and our communities. And all this screen time is exhausting us. Now, more than ever, at the end of the day, we feel not just dulled by technology, but weary. How about you? If technology is just another drug, as Bradbury suggested, maybe that's a helpful definition, because then we know we need to control it. While Zoom and social media apps can connect us more than ever, and have been critical in keeping connections these past few months, we also know that technology is isolating us from each other and from ourselves. A few years ago, there was an interview on the subject on National Public Radio with Terry Gross. Her guest was Sherry Turkle, a clinical psychologist and founder of Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Initiative on Technology and Self. Turkle had published a book based on 15 years of research on how devices are changing relationships. The book is called Alone Together: Why We Expect More from Technology and Less from Each Other. As the story reports, when Turkle asked teens and adults why they preferred text messaging over face-to-face conversation, they responded that when you're face-to-face, you can't control what you're going to say, and you don't know how long it's going to take or where it could go. But Turkle believes that these perceived weaknesses of conversation are actually conversation's strengths. Face-to-face interaction teaches skills of negotiation, of reading each other's emotion, of having to face the complexity of confrontation, dealing with complex emotion. Turkle thinks that people who feel they are too busy to have conversations in person are not making the important emotional connections they otherwise would. All this leads to her theory that it is possible to be in constant digital communication and yet still feel very much alone. She found people of all ages are drawn to their devices for a similar reason. What is so seductive about texting, she says, about keeping that phone on, about that little red light, is you want to know who wants you. I confess to being guilty of that. I will often leave my phone in another room or leave it on silent mode. I'll forget it for hours. But when I do get it and no text or email or Facebook alert has come in, sometimes I feel disappointed that no one has noticed my absence. So when I accidentally don't use technology, I feel isolated, disconnected in a negative way. But when I purposefully disconnect, that's a different story. When I put an away message on my email, I can feel all my burdens lightening. When I turn on airplane mode or somehow find a place without Wi-Fi, I feel relaxed and renewed. These are two realities of silence in this digital world. Sometimes it's wonderful. Sometimes it's foreboding. Sometimes unplugging means renewal, and sometimes it means that the volume of negative voices inside our minds gets turned up. Yet we know we can't ignore those voices or turn on the TV to distract us from facing our worries. This is part of the human experience. We all question our past choices and worry about our futures at some point. We all wonder what it's all about and what will be left when we're gone. And it's really good that we do, because otherwise we'd never grow emotionally or spiritually. We'd never progress as a species. In silence, we can hear those voices that admit our personal truths and articulate the essence of who we are. And when we're intentional about finding silence, sometimes it is golden, as the Temptations sang. Another character in Fahrenheit 451 is Faber, a retired English teacher who memorized the burned books so that they're not lost. He tells Montag that the world they're living in needs more leisure. Oh, but we've got plenty of off hours, Montag says. Off hours, yes, but time to think? If you're not driving 100 miles an hour at a clip where you can't think of anything else but the danger, then you're playing some game or sitting in some room where you can't argue with the four-wall televisor. Why? The televisor is real. It's immediate. It has dimension. It tells you what to think, and it blasts it in. It must be right. It seems so right. It rushes on you so quickly to its own conclusions, your mind hasn't time to protest. What nonsense. I think we are there. The impassioned newscaster, the provocative tweet, the inspiring quote in a pretty font on Facebook, it all seems so right, it must be true. We don't give our minds time to protest what nonsense, or give ourselves time to digest information. We don't give ourselves time to make connections or think critically. We just take in the information, the factoids, and as fast as we take it in, there's more coming at us. But we need time to really understand a news report or a Facebook share. We need to be able to sort out what's really fake news. We need time to process the complexities of the world, the tragedies and the joys, and we need to understand how all those things might influence us, might give us space to grow. We need time, we need silence. A year before Fahrenheit 451 was published, a composer made a statement about silence. John Cage wrote 433, a musical composition for any instrument with 3 movements. If Tim were to play it now, he'd sit at the piano and rest his fingers on the keys. The music of that composition is all around us. Cage said that the music is in the sounds of the surroundings, the noises of people and electricity, and the environment. We need to continue to hear that music, to find emotion and expression and experience in the silence. We can take more control over the noise and the technology, including the ultimate control of turning it off. Even if plugging in is how we see our families and friends, how we do church now, and how we get our hours in at work, well, it's especially important that we make time to unplug. We can still make space to listen to the sound of the sun. When we seek to enjoy silence, to get something out of it, we're exposed to a whole world of possibilities. We hear the music and the rhythms of life, in our breath, in the rain on the roof, in the shuffling of humans and creatures all around us. If you want to unplug a little, here are a few disciplines you might try. Join the Church of the Larger Fellowship in a social media Sabbath, 1 day a week. Be intentional about your technology use in your downtime. Use just one piece of technology at a time. Don't bring screens into bed. Have a phone or computer or Zoom-free day, often. Drive without the radio on. Have TV-free nights or weeks. Don't fall asleep to the sound of TV or music or talk radio. Practice meditation. Schedule a time for silence in your day. Listen to the silence. Learn John Cage's 433 for yourself. And something we can all do, especially as part of a church community, share what you hear in the silence with someone you trust. Unplugging and listening to silence is very powerful because it allows us to hear ourselves and to hear each other more clearly. When we know ourselves better, we can connect to other people on a deeper level. There's no doubt in my mind that we are in danger of making Ray Bradbury's dystopian future a permanent reality. We have already seen many people dulled into compliance. We must resist. We must continue to make time for silence, not just on Sunday mornings, although that's a good start. We must continue to make time to find meaning in life, time to unplug, to sit and listen to the sound of the sun, to the sound of silence. And most importantly, listen to that still, small voice inside of you, because that's the source of love and hope for this world. So may it be.
Big thank you to Morgan McLean for her sermon and her invitation for us to be intentional and thoughtful so that we might be present in whatever we're doing. And that's the call of the religious life, to pay attention. And we can't do that if we're not paying attention to what we're doing. So thank you, Morgan, and we wish you well. We remember you fondly here at the church. The song we just sang, the words are by Samir Badri. They're set to music by Ted Wormbrand, and the translation is, "Let us live in peace. Let us live in inner peace. Let us weave our dreams together. Let us die in peace. Let us live in peace. Let us die in peace." This week, that is the ask for all of us, that we might live in peace and die in peace at the end of long, good, and peaceful lives where our dreams are woven together. We'll extinguish the chalice here at the church, and we invite you to extinguish your chalices at home with words of benediction from the author and preacher and civil rights activist Howard Thurman, who I think has brought together in these words Morgan's call for us to attend to the inner voice and the moment that we are in about what work we need to be doing and for what reason. Thurman writes, "In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. May it be so. We'll see some of you for coffee hour in a few moments. We'll sing together our sung blessing.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way. Go our way in peace, wander as we may. Blessed is the path we take, may love guide us on our way.
Go in peace.